Welcome to the Spacious Unknowing Network, Sunshine for Your Soul, with Julio
and JoJo Rose.
We invite you to enter into ecological equanimity in the unified field of spacious unknowing.
We open and awaken to broaden your access to the soul rhythm in all of us.
We engage in the pilgrimage inward to feel the infinite love that beats in the rhythm of our collective soul. We will guide you to new horizons and infinite love during our Inquire Within segment.
To accept that, you create your field.
I create my field.
And together, we create the unified field. Spacious Unknowing Network
with Julio
and JoJo Rose starts now. Aloha and welcome to Spacious Unknowing Network, communing with your soul. I'm JoJo Rose, initiate of Spacious Unknowing, and I'm here with Julio Rose, founder of Spacious Unknowing Network. Today we'll be speaking on conscious love is real, palpable, and the field of love is unending with no beginning. Julio Rose, your life has been filled with conscious love that flows from your insides out into your life, no matter what you have faced or circumstances have been in your life. Will you share with us how that is and has been for you?
Well, it's interesting because the very first thing I want to talk about is I was like 6 years old. Maybe I had just had my birthday. Maybe I was 7. Yeah, probably. And it was time for me to have my first Holy Communion. So I had gone to the bus stop because I needed to go to church for my first confession.
Yes.
So I was sitting on the steps of an establishment where the bus came, and a woman came out the door and she said, "What's your name? How old are you?" And I told her, and she said, "Who is your father?" And I said, Benny. And the minute I said that, she turned on her heel and went back in. And I felt like she was a judge, jury, and executioner all in one big fell swoop. And I just stood there and realized that, I don't ever want to gossip or label somebody or judge them. That did not feel good. I don't ever want someone else to not feel good from me. It just really wrung me out. I mean, I really knew that this was an important decision.
Yes.
So I went to church, of course, and normally I would have had my siblings with me, but they didn't need to go. So that was why I was by myself. And so when I got back home that night, I was sound asleep, and I heard thud, bump, all kinds of noise in the kitchen. So I ran downstairs. And recently, because my father worked on the same street where we lived,
yes,
my mother had let me go watch him work.
Yes.
He was a bricklayer, and he had his trowel, his tool, and he was very good at it. And he danced that trowel and slapped on that, put those bricks up one after the other. And I thought, what is happening here is unreasonable. I've reached the age of reason, but this is very unreasonable. My father with the dancing hands is hitting my mother.
Ooh.
And I was just so taken. And then like consciousness opened and the light showed me both of them. And I received the word blameless. Well, that was what I had just decided with that woman. So wow, it was fast. And I recognized that, yeah, there was no one to blame here. That's no way to see it. And I just felt how, like, life was not perfect. This whole year has been very strange all the way around. Larry's birth, and after that, all this started. And my best friend, Barbara, had been quarantined. She had diphtheria and she died. So I never got to see her again. And that was, we were together every single day. We were best buddies. And my cat, my favorite cat, Tiger, that I put in my carriage and dressed him in doll clothes. I don't know how he put up with me, but I love that cat so much. My neighbor came over and said that my cat was dead in his cellar, that he had eaten rat poison. And I said, I want to see him. And so I went over, and he was dead, and somebody had cut his long tail off. And it just felt like everything was a little crazy.
Yeah.
And I was very aware that, life is not perfect. I never had that feeling, but I did know that my father did. He felt like life was perfect. And I know a lot of people think that way, but I wasn't one of them. But I really realized as I was there with my mother and father that I didn't ever want to hit anybody. And I didn't ever want to let anyone hit me, because I was conscious and I would be responsible for that, being conscious of being conscious.
Yes.
And blameless means that the people are not really conscious of what this is all about. And I began to see that. So it was all quite, I would say, new and different. And I, yeah. So on Monday after school, I always went to my Aunt Marie's house. My Aunt Marie was my godmother, and her husband, my Uncle Ray, was my godfather. And my mother had us stay there with her while she worked at the tax assessor's office. So Larry was there, and he was in the stroller, a carriage, and I was there too, after school. So I had asked my auntie if I could help her. And she said, oh yeah, go downstairs and get the potatoes for dinner. And so I switched on the light, but the stairs were really dimly lit. I couldn't see very well, but I went down and I stood on a plank and reached into the barrel, but I couldn't reach the potatoes. They were so deeply in.
Yes.
And so I stepped off the plank and went boom, just my feet went up from under me, and I just went down in this big mud pie on my back. Boom. And my hands were oozing, my fingers were in the mud, just oozing all that good primordial slime.
It was lots of mud.
A lot of it. And so I stood up, and my Aunt Marie came downstairs, and she was in bad humor. She took me upstairs and said, go outside and swing and get dry. Oh, yeah. So I ran outside, and it was kind of fun because my mother never let me get dirty. So this was a real joy. I mean, my whole back was full of mud and goop, and my braids were all stuck together.
Oh boy.
And so I ran to kind of like swooping like a bird, you know, flying
Yes.
through the air because
Yes.
I had to get dry. And it was really wet boop. And so I rolled over in the grass, getting some of it off from me. And then I went and sat on the swing and was pondering my parents and considering that they had a garden and they worked in the garden every evening and were such good friends. And, you know, they'd hold hands and sometimes kiss. And it was so sweet. They were so sweet together. How could this be happening when
Yeah.
they were so? And I knew that my father drank but he never did a lot, you know, and now he was like Jekyll and Hyde, like a different
Oh,
man.
yeah.
And it was just such a different dad. And I was really wanting to understand what was going on. Everything in my life seemed nondescript. I couldn't even remember who my teacher was in first grade. And then it just was very thought-provoking, I would say. And I did wonder if that's why my grandmother had been silenced, and my father was acting out like his father had. And just the whole thing was strange to me. And I knew my mother, you know, she was raised very differently. She had 10 brothers and 2 sisters, and they were, my mother called my father to account, and obviously he didn't like it. And that was not common to her. She was accustomed to living in a family where everybody was just naturally accountable
Yes.
without even pondering it, because that's life. And so she was shocked that he was so angry about her calling him to something greater. And so that was all going on, and it was our new little brother Larry. He was so cute. So there was that was a good thing.
Yes.
And I my mother, it was coming my mother, and she saw me and she was mad. And she went and talked with my Aunt Marie, and she came out and took me by the hand and took Larry's carriage and walked so fast I could hardly keep up. And she said, I come home from the tax assessor's office, and instead of being able to go home and cook for the family, I have to go home and clean you up. I don't know why Aunt Marie couldn't have done that. And I just looked at her, and she had this big hard face. Scrunch. It was like, oh, I'm in trouble. So we got home, and she took my braids apart, and my hair was dark and I could sit on it. So it was long and thick, and
Oh boy.
she was brushing the mud out of it, and then she shampooed it, my hair, and it was like slap, slather, slather, slap. My mother was seriously so gentle. No, not tonight. I was like, okay. This was some kind of cleansing that was going on. And so we weathered it. I still had hair.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, yes.
And she was, she got it all out of her system. Oh gosh. And then
Yeah, and intertwined with this, I mean, that's for a child, that is much to consider, much to be with. And you always were an inquiry. You always wanted to understand. You always had to understand.
Yeah, for sure.
And there was all of a sudden a huge dichotomy of what was happening and the things that had happened with your friend and your cat. And then the humor and the love that was in your family with each other. It was like this huge difference.
Yeah. Well, we
Really
get
big
back to that,
difference.
and I was sure of it. And that evening, I was in bed, and my father had his friend, Mr. Dulac, over visiting, and my mother, and the three of them were talking. And all of a sudden, I heard my father say loud talk, and
Mm.
I decided that I would stay awake and go downstairs so they'd focus on me, not on each other, and that they would make it to go to my first communion the next day. So my father said, "What are you doing up?" And I just slipped into the bathroom, didn't say a word. And so when I came out, I just said goodnight and went upstairs. But I didn't go to sleep. I was wide awake and pondering the night that my father and mother had gone out to work on the garden, and I was washing dishes, and I had put the dish drainer on a basin in the sink, and I put all of the dishes up at one end where they tipped over onto the floor and broke.
Oh boy.
And my father and mother came running in from the garden, and they wanted to be sure I was okay. And as soon as they knew that, my father carried me into the other room so they could pick up the pieces.
Yes.
And they did, and I was crying, and I was so sorry that I broke all their pretty dishes. And they said, "Oh, we can replace these. As long as you're okay."
How old were you?
5.
Okay.
And so they just took care of it, and that's how they were with all of us, So I was pondering that while I wasn't sleeping. And I went back downstairs, and my my father and both of them said something to me, and I slipped into the bathroom again. He said I had a toothache. That's right.
Okay.
And so Mr. Dulac said, "Well, let me press on your tooth and I'll give you $1." And my mother said, "Oh, well, you could buy the rosary with that. That's just enough." And I just didn't care a thing about either one. So I went in the bathroom, and there were all kinds of sounds while I was in the bathroom. And I came out, and Mr. Dulac said, "It's the last chance. Your mother gave me some clothes, and I'll put my finger on your toothache, and it'll get all better, and I'll give you the $1." And so my mother and father both nodded yes to me. So I said, "Okay." And he did, and it did feel better. And he gave me the $1, and my father and mother saw him to the door and said, "Good night." Like, "We're going to bed." I took the hint when I went upstairs. Put the $1 under my pillow for safekeeping till the
Yes.
morning. And so in the morning, I got up, and my mother took me to their bedroom, and on their bed was the most beautiful white dress that I had ever seen. And when I touched it, it was so soft. And my mother said that my Aunt Amilda had used some crochet needles to make it with yarn.
Wow.
And it was so soft and beautiful. And she was supposed to have it done by my birthday, and that's why I didn't. I just had a pie. My mother made me a lemon meringue pie, my favorite, for my birthday, and that's what I had received. And she said, and so on the bed next to the dress was my long white stockings, very exciting, and then my white little girl strappy shoes. Never had those before. And my mother said, you can wear the veil that your sisters have used for their first communion. Okay. So I was so excited. And
Yeah.
my father came into the room and I said, oh, Mom and Daddy, I just love it. I call my mother Mama. She was French. Mama was her name. And it was Daddy. So I gave them big hugs and thanked them. And I was so excited. And so after I was dressed and everyone was ready, we took a taxi to the church. And I went downstairs where all the children were gathered, the boys and the girls, and my parents and siblings went upstairs to sit down. And the boys were so handsome, suits, and the girls had their beautiful white dresses and veils on. It was just so beautiful. There were so many of us, over 100. And
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, we walked up the stairs into the church from the front, and there were a lot of seats that were vacant for us to fill. And it just was such a beautiful ceremony. And singing, the choir, and all of it. And I so appreciated all my family went to communion and too. And so afterwards we went home by taxi, and my mother had a roast in the oven, which she always did every Sunday. And it was always different because she grew up on a farm, so she understood good food, and definitely we were fed good food.
Yes.
And so she had a pot roast with carrots and potatoes and gravy, and that was our meal for this Sunday. Sometimes we had veal or roast veal or chicken or pork, and it was always a little different. And I thought she must have been a chef in another lifetime. She was a really good cook. So she had made biscuits, and my sister Janine had made a beautiful piece for the center of the table. She was such a wonderful artist. And that she had set the table with the good china and the good silver. And it was just really beautiful. All the party felt like a big party.
Yeah, celebratory.
And my Uncle Ray and Aunt Marie came. They showed up at the door, and they had gifts for me. And my Uncle Ray handed me a gift, and I opened the present, and it was a bright red sweater, which my mother never would have bought me. She didn't let me wear red. And I was so excited. I had a red sweater. Woohoo! So I had to put it on right now, even though it was hot. And then my Uncle Ray nudged my Aunt Marie, and she gave me another present. And I opened it, and it was a dress. And it was a blue and had red and white in it. And it was from a store. Well, my mother made all our clothes, and I loved what she made, but this was a store one. So I asked if I could try it on. My mother was still cooking, so I had time. So I tried on the dress, and I put on the sweater, and I pirouetted into the living room.
For everyone to see.
Yeah,
Gave
to
them
show.
a show.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And everyone clapped, it was fun. We all had such a good time about it. And my Uncle Ray and Aunt Marie were thrilled that I loved the clothes.
Yes.
And my mother had made, well, she had put the biscuits in the oven, but she had made cream peas too,
Ooh.
which I loved. And oh yeah, and she had bread pudding, and she always made this very special sauce
Yes.
for it that was refrigerated, but we only had an ice box actually. And she took it out of the ice box, and so pretty much we were almost ready to sit to eat. So we put all the food on the table, and there were so many of us, and we just so enjoyed each other. And I felt so thankful that I had such a generous family. I just felt so deeply, deeply thankful. And we all had such a good time. So it was, yes, I could breathe again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds like a wonderful celebration with wonderful food. And of course, the company.
Yeah. All of it was
Yeah.
very, very touching and very real. And the communion was just touched me so deeply. And I was, it was a thrilling day. It was
Yeah.
a happy day.
Yes.
And I had my big smile inside with a lot of happiness.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the big smile inside. Maybe when we come back from break. So stay with us, stay tuned, because big smile inside is pretty darn special. And we want to speak on that. So we'll be right back. Welcome. You're listening to Spacious Unknowing Network, communing with your soul. So we were speaking right before the break on JoJo Rose's big smile inside.
My big celebration for my first Holy Communion.
Yes.
And the big smile inside that just lit up my face. And sometimes people didn't like it. And sometimes people liked it. It didn't stop me.
No, it never has. That's for sure.
Either way. So there was so much to,
we at the very beginning were speaking on conscious love is real and palpable, and that in the field of love it's unending with no beginning. And I remember when I read this chapter how I spoke on the dichotomy, but something that I felt in your word, and you write in such a way that it's very visual. It's visceral. And the love that you always had and have is, well, for me, it's different from how most people share that love. It's very full and alive, and even in the midst of all what the seeming chaos that was going on, or the things that felt you really had to go in with to get understanding, conscious love was still present.
Yeah. Well, that's all there is to me. That's all there is. I was born with it, and I didn't know it was odd or strange or different or anything, because it was my life.
Yeah.
And it was very active and alive inside of me, and I couldn't hide it.
No.
And yeah, things happened, but it was always, how am I going to see this and be with this?
Right.
And I always relied upon my big smile inside to get me through whatever it was, because that was very real to me.
Yeah.
and I was born with it, so it was natural and present. And so, yeah, that was, yeah, yeah,
And I know that's true because it's felt in your writing. It's
yeah,
felt when you speak.
yeah.
And
Well, I have to tell you that before this, first communion, when my mother got better,
yes.
she and I would, she listened to stories on the radio.
Oh, how cool.
There were daily stories on the
Yes.
radio, and she would listen to them, and there were commercials in between. So I
Okay.
learned all the commercials. And she'd be cleaning the house and listening to the radio, and I would sing, and when there was an ad or something. And it just was such fun. It was just the two of us because, well, Larry wasn't born yet. I was 5 when Larry was born. So I wasn't yet 5.
Okay.
Or if I was, it wasn't after his birth.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it kind of took off from being with her when she was getting better.
Yes.
And then just she was up and about, and so was I, and we enjoyed each other's company.
Yeah.
And I just remember those times as so
Mhm.
precious and important in my own growth, as a child. And yeah, it was sweet.
It is sweet. So much of what you've shared is sweet because you can feel, the way your parents were with the dishes with you.
Yeah.
And the way that they held each other's hand and tended the garden and just it's very apparent that it's the little things
Yeah.
that made everything so sweet and tender.
Yeah, it was always the little things that made everything work better. And definitely that was true. And so then when my mother went to work at the tax assessor's office, I was in school.
Okay.
So yeah. And that's where I would go after school, was to my Aunt Marie's. But definitely yeah. Oh, and my father, after dinner, I'd have a choice sometimes to do the dishes or comb his hair. I would choose. Guess what I would choose?
Doing his hair.
So one night I took out all the curlers and all kinds of, I don't know, just everything I could find in the house that were hair things. And I put them on the table where I would have the comb, and he said, "Don't you put those in my hair down?" I said, "Oh, okay." And so
Guess what she did?
yeah, he fell asleep.
Oh boy, perfect.
So I put the curlers and the gewgaws and all the stuff I had in his hair. And there was a knock on the door, and he got up to go into the door, and it was somebody in the neighborhood who wanted to hire him to make a chimney for their house. And so he's smirking at my father, and my father went, "Oh," with his hand up on his head. And he and I laughed, and the man laughed, and it was all fun.
Yes.
So he made me take them all out of his hair.
I'm glad he laughed with you.
And maybe the next night he decided I should go do dishes. But yeah, that happened all through. Yeah, that was always fun. Combing his hair.
And then didn't you listen to basketball with
Oh
him?
yeah. The team that was at high school, where we lived was a top team in the state that year. And we had a radio that was tall. And we'd sit around it. It was so weird putting your ear against a radio when the sound was in the room. I mean, anyway, we all did it. It was fun. And I think my father was so exuberant, and I think he almost did play-by-play for the
Oh,
team
wow,
because
interesting, yeah.
I learned so much about basketball from what he did during that period of time. And then to have a son who is a play-by-play person for the NBA is like,
Wow,
whoa.
yeah,
The connection
yes.
was really true because from 7th grade on, I was the captain of the basketball girls team. So definitely it was in the family.
Yes.
Basketball was in the family.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so he would call the game, and I learned so much about basketball that during that season, because they played quite a few teams in the state. And so they were all broadcast.
Yeah.
And we would listen to all of them. And I think I learned how to play. Instead of having a basket, and
Yeah,
and a ball, I learned how to play
from
from
the listening
the listening
and that your dad's play by
and
play.
learning the
Cool.
rules and all of it. So
Yeah,
that was fun. That was really enjoyable.
what a great way to learn.
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
it definitely was integral to our
Yes,
lives in the evening, those evenings when we were, and I'm sure my mother put up with it, but she liked it because we enjoyed it
yes.
and she was good with it.
Did she ever join in with you?
Not
No,
really. She always had so many other things to
Things-
do, but
yeah.
she didn't ever say don't, or,
Yeah,
she didn't even make us go to bed because she knew that this was once a year. It wasn't like it was going to be every
every night. Yeah,
night. So, yeah, it was fun.
it's nice to have those times though where you can be with a parent that way and each other,
Yeah,
and just have fun and enjoy, and you're learning too.
yep, I did. I was learning for sure. And then, yeah, well, during the time that my mother and I were at home, there was nobody in the neighborhood to play with because they were all in school.
Right.
And
Okay.
so once my siblings came home, then all the kids in the neighborhood
Yes.
came home. So that's when we went out
Yeah.
to play. And there were tons of us, and they were all different ages. I loved it. It was wonderful. Just so easy. And then on the days that we weren't playing because it was raining, we were swapping comic books. And of course, Superman was my favorite. And I liked his kryptonite, and I liked all the interesting stories, and Wonder Woman. So
Yeah.
we swapped comic books cover for cover. When they were
Wow.
new, they had a cover. When they weren't new, they didn't. And we would swap them with the neighbors. And so always we had new ones and old ones, and they had new ones and old ones.
You always had something to be in with each other, no matter what.
That's right.
Rain, shine, or
Yep.
snow, or whatever.
It was true. That was always, they were all part of our lives. Yeah, we had wonderful, there was Macintosh apples were
Ooh.
in Maine, they
Yes.
were very much grown there. And there was a tree in our neighborhood, and there was a cherry tree, but it was the tart cherries, tiny ones.
Yes.
And lilacs. Oh,
Yeah.
they were so fragrant and beautiful. And there was just so much little strawberries we'd find and eat. And yeah.
And then the garden your parents had.
Well, the garden we were not allowed in, except when a little older, we went and got fresh, ripe tomatoes.
Mm.
And we put salt in our left hand and ate those tomatoes, and oh, they were so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the food. My mother canned all of it, so we
Wow.
had it in the winter in soups and stews and different ways. She canned everything. And pickles. We had cucumber pickles, different
Yeah.
kinds.
Wow.
And she didn't allow us in her kitchen, so I never learned how to do any of that.
Mm.
But my older sisters did. I'm glad I didn't.
Even though you didn't, I've always loved your cooking. So
Well, I always loved
It's-
cooking.
yeah.
but I don't think I would have liked canning.
no,
Anyway,
that's
I never did it, so I
that's an
can't.
art form in and of itself.
Well, I can't really
That's-
say it because I never did it.
Yeah, I never did it either.
Yeah. So
I just know it's a process.
yeah. And big, huge
Yeah.
pots.
Yes.
I do remember that part, but we weren't allowed in her kitchen. And that was a good thing. But I was like that too. I really didn't like you children being in the kitchen when I was cooking. Of course, Jay ended up learning how to cook, so
I'd sneak in every now and again.
oh
Like
yeah,
when you made
you
your
all
roast
did.
chicken and
Yeah.
woke up one night and you were making a cake. It's like, yeah, yum. Went right back to bed and back to sleep, but still.
Oh yeah, those cakes
got
were
to see it.
special.
Yep, they sure were.
Birthdays were important.
Yes.
Yep.
So after your family celebration and your first Holy Communion, did you notice a difference in you and a difference in your life in any way?
I did feel different inside, yeah. It was pretty beautiful. Anyway, I have from my father and mother, seeing them blameless. I wrote, blameless. The spiritual heart hums and purrs and pours forth a fountain of radiant love. A fountain of radiant love. Blameless. To be able to love beyond flaws, beyond unwanted, beyond unworthy, is the true power of love. Yeah. So that was all integral to my special day. Yeah. All of it.
Yeah, that the way you've written that is that's conscious love. That's what
Yeah.
how you have lived your life.
Yeah. Yeah. To be able to love beyond flaws,
Yes.
beyond unwanted,
Yes.
beyond unworthy, is the true power of love. Blameless. The spiritual heart hums and purrs and pours forth a fountain of radiant love. Yeah. Yes. It's true.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was part of the whole ceremony to me.
That radiant love.
All of it. I always hear that hum and purr inside of the Om, AUM sound. And the smile and the big the love. Yeah. It's all important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's important every day. Every moment of every day. No matter what is facing us or whom is facing us.
It's true.
Thank you once again for sharing from your life. It's interesting because no matter how many times I hear different happenings in your life, I always learn something new from what you share. And it's so enriching, so colorful.
So what would you learn this time?
Well, I think what I feel is how important what you just said, the love, the radiant love, and that always being present, is how important it is as an individual soul to be truly connected to that and the intention of living that kind of life. And I know in my heart and soul, this has been your life, your whole life. And I've had moments in and out. Now it's making the intention to have that always be true, no matter what.
Yeah, it is without a doubt the best way to live. It doesn't leave anything straggling or, 5 days ago, that already was taken care of 5 days ago.
Yeah. Yes.
Yesterday, that was already taken care of yesterday. Didn't carry it over till today. And that is such a rich way to live because there's no, I don't know, it's just a depth of understanding that, well, it's like making that decision for a no pollution zone when I was 12, because the mind can be polluted by thoughts that linger and stay and fester, and it isn't worthwhile to hold on to those.
No.
And it just doesn't hold any interest for me.
No.
And to have that decision when I was 3 that I'd rather die than be taken prisoner has been a lifelong decision. It wasn't just one time.
No.
So that set the tone for my life.
Yes.
And it was intended. It's the purpose for which I came here. It definitely was and has always been integral.
Well, in what you're just saying, you're tapping into so much of what you have written in your book that will be forthcoming, decisions and how important they are. And this particular chapter that you just shared from, you always, this is the way I see it and feel it with you, is that you always see the big picture and everything. So when you spoke of perfect world for that little bit, it's so many people live thinking everything has to be perfect. I certainly was one of them. But you always see it like much bigger than that in consciousness, from consciousness, so that you see the fullness and the wholeness of it. And you use everything in your life with which to decide in here.
It doesn't even, it almost isn't a decision. It
No,
rises from spacious unknowing,
Mhm.
becomes known to me.
Yeah.
Because it's needed right now.
Yeah.
It's needed right now.
Yeah.
Everything that has arisen that way, like I'd rather die than be taken prisoner, that rose up from inside of me. And it was tangible, real. It still is. It
Mhm.
always will be, because
Yeah.
it was alive.
Yeah.
When it's alive and it becomes known, it's in consciousness, and it's forever in consciousness. Never goes away.
No.
Has nowhere to go. And the same is true of, understanding that the world isn't perfect, and understanding that judgment is what people want to make themselves believe they can create a perfect world. But it really is mostly what I've watched is people get very disappointed easily by that idea. And so to really see in consciousness what blameless is, what inculpable is so much more the way I live, and it's just the way I live. I didn't plan it. I don't plan it.
No, you don't.
It all just rises when it's needed. And I can trust that. I don't ever not have that ability to have it rise, because I don't interfere with it. And I don't act like I already know, because I don't. It's a pretty free life.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's consciousness. It's being aware of the vibes in life. The vibration is what is real, is what is tangible. When people live a by rote life, they can't feel the vibration. They can't feel the frequency. They can't feel the consciousness. And so it's a rather dull, the senses are dulled. And yet they're hyper.
Yeah.
In regard to extremes.
I was just going to say extremes, yes.
And so it's a different world. That's not a world I've ever lived in. So, I mean, it's been around me, but not in me.
I am grateful that you are here. I am grateful that you are in my life. I am grateful that we can be here together this way, where you can be sharing with people who you are.
Yeah.
Who you truly are. And I invite the listeners to join us. Come and find out for yourself what this life is, what it's made up of, how it feels. It's one thing to listen to someone speak of it. It's another to feel it for yourself. And so I invite you to join us and learn for yourself from your inner being what a life in spacious unknowing truly is from your soul rhythm. So I really deeply honor and respect the way you share and speak the word, and are so just here and present and loving, and do live from consciousness and in consciousness.
Yes.
My life will never be the same from this with you.
And I'm very thankful for that, dear girl. Yes, I am. And that would be true no matter who it is.
Exactly.
So I definitely,
Exactly.
encourage that in everyone I know. So
Yep.
definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have come to the end of the show. And so, again, I invite you to come and join us in this life. Couple of different ways that you can reach JoJo Rose or me, JoJo Rose. Email us sun@spaciousUnknowingnetwork.com. We would love it if you would go to our website and join or sign in for Spacious Unknowing meditations that you'll receive once a month. Finally, we would love to hear from you and find out from you, the listener, what has touched you from any of the shows that you've listened to. What really sparks or stirs your soul from what you've listened to? Again, either our email address or you can send us a message on the website on our contact page. We will see you again next Monday. Or no, I'm sorry. We will see you again the following Monday. And this show will be available this Monday, the 5th. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to the Spacious Unknowing Network, Sunshine for Your Soul, with Julie O.
And JoJo Rose.
Join us again for life-affirming communication every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time on TransformationTalkRadio.com so that you can bask in the rays of infinite love.
Access soul rhythm to tap into your real being for your heartbeat in the rhythm of your soul.
Feel it guide you to new horizons and unlimited infinite love. For more information about Julie O.
and JoJo Rose,
visit SpaciousUnknowingNetwork.com. That's SpaciousUnknowingNetwork.com.